Welcome to the Dog Trainers Podcast, a podcast created by dog trainers for dog trainers or anyone who's ever fallen in love with man's best friend.
Episode 13, a deeper look into socialization. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dog Trainers Podcast. My name's Mariano, that's Brent, and we thank you guys so much for sticking with us, and we love all the support that we've been seeing for our Deeper Look series. So for this episode 13, we're going to keep things going. It's going to be a deeper look into socialization. Now, before we dive in, you can find us on Instagram. You can find me at Untamed Dog Co. That's Untamed Dog Co. All one word. You can find Brent at Canis Behavior. That's Canis Behavior. All one word. So with that, let's dive right in. Over to you, Brent.
What is up, Mariano? It has been a whole week since I've seen you again, and I still miss you every single time. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, man, it's all good. We've had a chance to talk more this week, so that's pretty good.
I know, but I want to see that face. If you guys don't know what Mariano looks like, if you guys are watching on podcast, he's a handsome fella. Sometimes he's just really easy on the eyes, really good to look at. But anyways, that's not what we're here to talk about, guys. Today we are talking about, we could talk about it, but
go ahead.
That would take hours. Anyways, today we are going to be covering the subject of socialization and kind of what it is, what people think it is, again, the science behind it, the studies behind it, the good and the bad practices of it all. Honestly, let's go ahead and start the same way we start every Talk Pinky. Let's talk about what we see as dog trainers commonly to be the public perspective. Okay, so let's go. What is the public perspective of socialization in regards to dog ownership, dog training, or dog ownership? What would you say, Mariano?
I would say that a big thing in terms of public perspective that I've noticed with socialization, and especially in the past 3 days, I've been getting a lot of calls regarding this exact thing. Mm-hmm. Everybody understands why it's important to socialize your dog, but almost no one seems to understand that context matters. And I'll put it this way. We have somebody will give us a call and say, okay, so here's the deal. I've had the dog since she was 3 months old, and I brought her everywhere, socialized her, cars, people, bikes, you name it. She was always great. She's now 7 months old, and 3 weeks ago, she just started growling at people. I don't know what it is. I thought I socialized her right and everything else. And, and barring some of the other variables like breeding and what the household and routine and all that could look like, I try to make clear to people, here's one possibility. It's possible that you kind of over socialize the dog. And that's not to say you shouldn't bring your dog out and let them meet and interact with things. But a lot of times I see people with a new puppy, a younger puppy, because 3 months, we're talking a young dog, and so they're so cute and they're so malleable that people just really take liberties. Like, oh, can I pet him? Can I hold him? Can I whatever, and for the owner is sure, the answer is always yes, because they think they're doing the right thing with socializing, but it's easy to overdo it. And it's your dog's getting tossed around like a hot potato. And so they get annoyed, and what I try to explain to people is finally your dog's old enough to be enough. And that's what they're saying. And I think it's worth noting that now that they have this this kind of annoyed connotation toward people, and it's ugh, is this person going to be all in my face again? Right. It's not that you should stop socializing, because you shouldn't. It's that you need to adjust the lens from which your dog is viewing this stuff. So
also to add to that, it's like the dog feeling abused versus feeling socialized or interacted with.
Exactly.
Right? I think this idea, so to kind of go to where this mentality came from. So, mind you, it's important to handle our dogs. It's important for people to hold our dogs. It's important for people to, be introduced to our dogs. All of these things are important. These are not the things. But I get what you're saying when it gets too far, where it gets to the point where the dog's actually not enjoying it, but is too young to really express that he's not enjoying it. I think that's a really good thing to talk about, because there are so many dogs that do show insecurities later in life, or they were over socialized, or their version of socialization, what the people thought were good practices, were actually the bad versions. And we'll break that down in the bad versus the good practices of socialization, because there is a fine line. And we'll give you guys some tips on what we recommend to be better socialization skills. Some of the public stuff that I want to talk about is like one thing that I commonly see is that people have this idea that socialization means playing with, right? Or to play with dogs or to play with humans, which part of socialization is interacting. But, so many times, like in a training session, I'll tell someone, your dog actually suffers from lack of socialization. And then their quick draw response is like, oh, no, I take him to daycare all the time. Or no, he plays with dogs all the time. Right. And so sometimes there's a little bit of a confusion of sometimes we have to separate socialization with people, socialization with places, socialization with other animals. So there's a little bit of confusion in the public perspective there.
You know what I think? It's not so much confusion as it is just oversimplification.
Right.
Like what I was getting at was they just don't take into account context. It's just like, oh yeah, well I let him play. There was no like, was it too much? Was it not enough? And I think with the daycare thing too, they almost see it as like a check mark or a box that they check off. It's like, yep, socialize my dog. Yep, do that. Daycare, that's done.
Check.
Right.
Yeah. Let's see, a couple other public perspective things. People associate socialization with playing. So as long as the dog is having a good time or is in a playful manner, then they think they're properly socializing. When we talk about, things of desensitization, I know people kind of people know that sometimes dogs are scared of things, right? Like vacuums, skateboards, bicycles, certain buses, all those things. And sometimes in the public perspective, it's not necessarily looked at as those things. Sometimes it's looked at as fear, or it's looked at as, the dog needs, the dog sometimes is reactive. Like the other day, I was walking a lady with her corgi down the street, and now this dog notoriously has a barking issue. Like he's a very vocal dog. He sees a dog, he barks. He sees a person he likes, he barks. And in this scenario, she was kind of getting fed up with it. We actually walked by a trash bag filled with leaves, and that trash bag filled with leaves moved when the wind blew, and the dog turned around and barked at it. She was like, see, I told you he barks. And I was like, yeah, but in this context, he was scared out of his mind of this trash bag filled with leaves that was a weird shape. It was made an awkward sound. And so he was pretty scared. So sometimes in public perspective, people understand the concepts, but they don't necessarily know how to best practice them. Because it takes a lot of time to do it. Right. What other misconceptions we see in public perspective when it comes to socialization?
I think another one is people sometimes feel the need to like jam it down a dog's throat if it's not super necessary. Like I've met
like a rescue or something.
Yeah, well, and especially with something like I've met dogs that were afraid of things that are like reasonable, like the garbage truck, something really loud and huge, and it's like, all right, well, I get that, and really, how often are you going to see that, and people have kind of made it a point to like, yeah, so I sit him outside. In fact, just the other day, I did a lesson where their dog is a social dog, playful, humans, dogs, everything, like a puppy with a very kind of bubbly temperament to him. But there's this one dog in particular that they were like, he just goes off every time he sees this dog. And we go for a walk. We see this dog. It's like a giant, like bully breed behind some short fence who just barks at him all day long. And so he was like, I've been trying to sit him in front of the fence and get him to relax. And I'm like, why? Just go for your walk. I mean, again, that's like, if you're making him do something he doesn't like, he's not just going to turn around and like it. You're just making him do something he doesn't like over and over again. Right.
And there is a time and a place that you pick that battle, but there's not enough foundation in the dog's under the dog's belt to actually be able to win that battle. Right. A majority of the time. Other public perspective that I see is very common. Let's say in theory, if a dog does lack socialization, let's say there's a rescue dog who someone says like one thing is like the sentiment that I need to socialize the dog who's not been socialized his whole life, right? So if there's a dog who is reactive towards other animals, or if there's a dog who necessarily gets defensive around other animals, sometimes people think the logic is, well, you know what he needs? More animals, right?
Right.
So that's kind of the logic of like, You don't like going to parties. You know what you need more of?
Right. Go to
More
more parties.
Go
Right.
to more parties, right? And then you'll get over it. So sometimes it's the simplification of desensitization and kind of classical conditioning and stuff like that. So cool. So we see kind of like play is a public perspective. People think socialization has to do with play.
Hmm.
People think socialization has to do with kind of just forcing the dog to get over things and get used to it. What else? Sometimes it's what did
It's
I just
oversimplified.
it
It's
is oversimplified. It's not broken down into its component pieces for people to really
right.
digest. So hopefully we could do that today. I think that'd be good.